essence of short dramas.
Escapism. I call them Gen Z soaps.
Could you briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Cayman Cardiff, and I have been acting for a little over a year now. It's crazy because I didn't ever think that I was going to be an actor. But when I was in college, I was actually preparing to go to medical school and to be a physician, to be a doctor. And then my manager, who I believe you've talked to, yeah, he asked me to be on his roster as a leading male in acting. And I didn't know what that meant. So I asked him for a little bit more information. And he said, next time you're in town, let's talk. So I met with Irvin and he told me he thought that I could be an actor, the steps that I would need to take in order to go about doing that. Now here I am. So it's kind of been a very interesting experience for me because I never really thought about acting as a potential way of and making a living and being a professional and all that. But here I am, and it has been one of the most fulfilling, most fun, and exciting things I've ever done.
How do you met your manager?
That's actually a cool question. So just from my Instagram, he found my Instagram one day and reached out to me through an email because on Instagram you can click email, and he emailed me and I responded and that's how he found me, honestly. It's weird because I never really checked that email, but I happened to see it and I happened to see what he wrote me, and I just decided to talk to him.
That was how long ago?
That was in 2023. So he messaged me in about April or May of 2023. I met with him in June of that year, and then I moved down in January of last year. So January of 2024 was when I moved to Los Angeles and started acting.
What was the first short drama you ever involved?
So the very first short drama I did was in Toronto for a production company called a platform called Joy Reels.
Yeah.
If you've heard of them, it's a Chinese company, but their production is based in Toronto. And they asked me to come down, and they flew me out. And I was like, well, if you're gonna pay for me to go and work, and I'll make money and make a thing, sure. So I went out and it was my first one was Santa Sent Me a Billionaire Husband. And I did that one. And in the middle of doing it, they asked if I would stay for another one, in which I said, sure, if you're going to pay and extend my flight or extend my stay and everything. And so they did. I stayed for basically an entire month in Toronto doing two films and had a blast. I didn't know what these were. I thought that they were maybe just like small projects shot on like an iPhone or something like that. I didn't realize that these were real movies that have just as much production value as, let's say, any of the Lifetime movies or commercials that I've done. The second one that I did in Toronto, Rejected Heiress. Yes, I was like a baseball player, and it was just a billionaire, and it was really focused around the girls and their drama, but I was just kind of there.
The billionaires you mentioned, it's a typical CEO romance trope. What do you think of the CEO plus misunderstanding plus love kind of formula?
That honestly, that trope is so silly. It's like, how many times do I have to tell you that I am the CEO or I'm the billionaire, or the girl playing undercover as as when she's actually a billionaire, but she's trying not to let people know. I think it's a funny trope. It was fun to do, and I got to do a lot of cool things. I enjoyed being a baseball star, which was fun.
Have you talked to your audience about the CEO thing? How do they feel about this?
I think there's a certain fantasy about somebody who's, got a lot of money and they're powerful, wealthy, leader individuals. So I think that's something that my fans do enjoy. But I think what I'm finding more is my fans enjoy good acting, meaning like roles that are different, are new, roles that challenge, like that I'm able to play as an actor, that I can bring a character to life for them. That's why I think my werewolf dramas people really like because I play a character in those. It's someone different, someone new. Playing Pretend, which is one from Candy Jar or Galatea TV, where it was like a nice rom-com. I was this kind of playboy character. Yes, I did have a lot of money, but it was more the character of me being this, I don't really care about love or anything like that. I'm hurt and all these things emotionally. I think that's the type of stuff that my fan base really enjoys me in.
Werewolf stories. Those are among the first genres that Chinese short drama used to when localizing for international markets. So,
Yeah.
how has the audience responded to this show? And why do you think the werewolf genre still resonate with the Western viewers?
It's interesting because I feel like, from what I understand, the trope itself actually is kind of like translated into American culture from clans and tribes and families, but then added in this werewolf thing because shows like Teen Wolf on the CW, shows like True Blood and other things that have werewolves and vampires in it have become really popular in the United States over the past 20, 30 years. And because of that, it's kind of easy to pull on those tropes and make them exciting. But what's fascinating to me about these is it's less about the actual werewolf transformation and more about the power structure, which is the alpha, who is the leader of the pack, and their interactions. And there is some fantasy to it. There's some of that gritty creature stuff that comes with, the fantasy. But I think people like the romantasy because it actually lends space for it to be a little bit more unrealistic, meaning you can play more into this sense of camp, which means it can be a little bit more silly or goofy, but also you can have a little bit more over the top dramatic growls and body stuff that you wouldn't really be able to do in a setting where it's just a CEO. And so there is that element of character play and fantasy that lets it be easier to watch or digest from a viewer's point of view, because it's already in the realm of fantasy. When you're watching a CEO billionaire who's trying to defend his love interest from some bully at workplace harasser, you can't really suspend your belief as much as with like a werewolf show where it's already fantasy.
Mafia. It's not really realistic
Yeah,
story.
Mafia, because it's like some other world that doesn't really exist in our reality, if that makes sense. I think Mafia is fascinating because you've got the whole similar vibes. I've only done one Mafia, but that one was more about me being a pilot than anything.
It's a boys love drama. Is
Uh-huh.
this popular overseas?
I mean, there's definitely a niche audience for it. There's a lot of LGBTQ or queer people in Western culture here. And so it's just about finding a way to tap in and getting those people to watch. I've gotten a lot of fans from my Mafia Pilot Boyfriend because they loved it so much. And you find with more niche things like that, you get a lot more devoted people to that fandom, if that makes sense. It's done really well. It was really popular. And I think it just depends because the majority of people watching vertical dramas or short dramas are women, and not as many women are going to watch a boy love romance as, say, a gay man or young men who are gay, things like that, who they want something that they can fantasize. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. I've had plenty of female viewers who say, "Oh, I loved my Mafia Pilot Boyfriend. It was such a good story. It was such a cute, campy romance." It really just depends on the viewers.
In China, we call boy love drama. Yeah, female audience.
That's awesome. Because I mean, like I said, there are some here, but it's not quite as prominent, especially with like a lot of the women watching these tend to be from more conservative religious backgrounds. And so in those religious atmospheres or zones, there's a lot less acceptance of queer media. So it depends on the specific spots, but there's also, like I said, there's a lot of women who have reached out and said, "Oh, I loved it so much. Thank you so much for being my Captain Rossi."
Alpha's Fated
Surrogate, yeah.
It's a one night stand, which is often used in Chinese short drama to bind characters. and I often say it's a bad setting. But this one, I think it's acceptable. And what do you take on this narrative device?
I think what's really important and something that I really, really strive for when I'm doing these romances is female consent. Because, for example, with Alpha's Fated Surrogate, there was like a whole multiple like sequence before anything happened where me, the alpha, like explicitly explained, this is what's going to happen if we do this. I want a family. This is what's going to happen. You're going to have a kid. And she's like, yes, I want it. The next night, she's like, oh, yeah, sure. Right. This is just a one night stand, blah. I'm like, I told you multiple times. And so there was this consent, but then coming in as the man, like being able to show what I love about Alpha's Fated Surrogate is the amount of care that Alpha Harrison has, the amount of love and devotion. He says, "You are my mate. I didn't just to get you pregnant. I know that we are fated to be together. And so I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to love you." And then once we were both on the same page, we were just like two little deviants together. We were just causing mayhem and mischief for the baddies in our show. And it was just so fun because we were like a united front taking on the bad guys in the show. And it was just really fun from that point on. We just got to just have a blast trusting in each other. And I think that's what I loved about that. We took the trope and made it really consent based and forward with a lot of love, with a lot of connection, companionship, and trust in one another. I think it was a really good example of what a relationship could be and should be.
Forever Begins Now. Did you play a soldier in it?
Yes, so that one's on Drama Wave, another Chinese app. Forever Begins Now is a story about, it's a protective bodyguard story. I was charged with protecting my co-star. So my name was Bryce, and I knew her father since I was a young soldier, and I've always kind of had a thing for her. I thought she was beautiful. And then her father gets killed. There are terrorists who are trying to find something that her father had hidden away. It was some schematics or plans. I'm not going to give everything away, but it's a fun action oriented story. I really, really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. The acting was good. And Emma Renegel, she was so good. She and I had really great chemistry. But the plot itself is about a soldier, special ops soldier, who is protected or who is charged with protecting her. And they ultimately fall in love, and Forever Begins Now. It's really cute.
I think it's original story.
I know a lot of the writers at Drama Wave. They write their own stories. So I've worked with one. I think she was the one that I did for my Mafia Pilot Boyfriend, which was adapted. It was actually going to be a normal romance, but then adapted to a boy love. And she was awesome. She was so much fun to work with. She was a great writer, and always we had really great exchange of ideas. Whenever there was a word that I was like, could we use this word or this word? She was always really helpful.
Can you give me an example of what part of script you changed with her?
For example, there was one, the term bullying, right? It's used in the States, it's used in like a school setting, like somebody is bullying another student. But the term was being used in a workplace setting in which it doesn't really work. You don't bully a coworker, you harass a coworker. And so I asked her if I could change the term bullying to harassing. And she was like, yeah, of course, that makes sense because that's just how we would use that term in English. Bullying, like a child thing. And no one there was children.
When you work with the Chinese platforms or the writers, is there anything you feel strange about the script? Because most of scripts are localized.
There's a few cultural things like sayings that we don't use or things. Whenever I have something that doesn't make sense as an actor, if I can't relate to it, I just try to find what the writer was trying to say, keep the same meaning or the same intention, and then just switch up the words a little bit to make more sense to me. And I've never had any problems with doing that. And then it just shows better on camera because it's words that I would actually use.
What about the story setting? Is anything strange to you?
A lot of the stuff that I've done have been all pretty normal settings, very characterized. Like Forever Begins Now was a soldier. That was fine. I was playing a soldier. Mafia Pilot Boyfriend, I was playing a pilot. It made sense. The Billionaire ones, I mean, the setting is in an office. There were some times when like my wardrobe, they'd make sure that I was in a tie when I was just like, well, why would I be in a tie when I'm just lounging around at home or going like little things like that that I was like, that doesn't really make sense, but they wanted me to have that look all the time. There haven't really been many settings. There's been the tropes, like so many slaps and things like that that I'm like, what why are we slapping? Because in America we don't slap people. Like it's
Right.
just not a thing. And so those types of things are silly to me sometimes. When I read my first script, my for Santa Sent Me a Billionaire Husband, all I could think was this feels like an anime.
Hmm.
Because I watch a lot of anime. And I was like, a lot of the way that the words were said, the way that little things like there was one portion where she was supposed to like shout to the sky and say something like, why would the universe treat me like that? We don't do that in American media. And so it was just that I was like, but that is something that I've seen in an anime setting where they'll speak in these VOs. The VOs are another thing. We use VOs sometimes as like an establishing thing, like at the beginning of a movie, like somebody you'll see little scenes and the main character will be talking, but you don't see them or you don't see them talking. It's a voiceover. Whereas the stream of consciousness voiceovers in these verticals very different to what I grew up with. Like there's not very many times in which somebody you're going to be seeing someone on screen and you hear inner dialogue. That doesn't happen very often. Um, but I think part of the reason comes down to the acting. Um, if you are a good actor, you can tell people what you're thinking with your face. But when it comes to these verticals, the idea is just tell the reader or the audience what's happening. Don't make them try and guess. Just tell the audience what's happening, and then they can follow the story easier. And I think that's part of it.
I do the production as well. And I realize why those people do the slapping because it's a way to track attention. It's like if you swipe TikTok videos, if two women, one is slapping another, you'll definitely stop and watch what they're doing.
Um, I think part of it also goes back to the acting aspect as well. With some of the early acting in this, oftentimes they would hire models or people who have really attractive features and things like that, but haven't had as much experience acting, which nothing wrong with that, but they just um, having less acting means more action needs to happen to make it easier for the actors to elicit emotions. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so if I can tell you right here with my eyes that I loathe you and I'm so angry right now, if I can tell you that with my face and my eyes, I don't need to slap you to tell you that I want to slap you, right? But oftentimes that can sometimes be hard to accomplish unless you have more experience as an actor. And so I think part of that is making up for inability to capture an audience just by what's going on here or with dialogue.
Saving Nora, that's
Yeah.
produced by Pocket FM. Aside from the format, horizontal versus vertical, how do you think Pocket FM's short drama different from the localized English language dramas produced by Chinese companies? I want to know those English language dramas produced by Chinese companies and produced by other companies, like
Okay.
the European company or maybe Korean company.
That's a great question. So it's interesting because I've worked with a multitude of different Chinese companies, and then a whole bunch of other non-Chinese companies at this point now. And there are some Chinese companies that are sticking to the formula that they've done for multiple years now, where it's very much over the top soap opera drama, and they're not straying away from that. There's other companies like, for example, I've worked with Drama Box multiple times now. They're Chinese, but they're expanding. They're doing different things. They're trying new ideas, new genres. We just had a meeting yesterday with some of, well, the head of production and the top executive producers and the other producers and writers and directors that they work with and some of the other actors. And it was all of us just talking about ideas of what we want to see from Drama Box, what kind of genres they want to work with. We talked about horror, we talked about action, we talked about different things, and all with romance elements, but able to see that they want to take it in a new direction. They want to go in different directions. Whereas other Chinese companies I've worked with still have not yet changed, which is okay because they know what they want and they know what they do. Companies like Pocket FM, Vigloo, Galatea TV, now Candy Jar, they take a different approach. We want these to be cinematic. We want these to be more like movies that people can consume in short form. I really, really like that approach. For example, I've done two dramas, Vigloo, that have not come out yet. And then I've got two more that I'm going to shoot in the next month with Vigloo. And they are, in my opinion, next level. They are really good quality. They have all of the elements of suspense and drama and these things without the kind of cheesy, campy sounds, the slaps, and all that. It is much more story driven, much more romance driven, much more cinematic to see and watch. The lighting is just really good. There's lots of really it's just they're trying to change it. They're trying to push the envelope further of making them a little bit more, I don't want to say higher quality because they're all good quality, but making them stand apart or stand out. Um, I don't think it has to do with whether they're Chinese or not. I think it has to do with whether or not the company itself wants to evolve. And actually, I'm going to Vietnam to shoot one in June.
Oh,
Mauricio.
I just interviewed him last Friday. So, is there any genres you always wanted to try but haven't had the chance to try yet?
I really want to start doing more action, whether that's a superhero or like fantasy action. So, like period piece, things like that. Something that has magic would be really fun. I love like elves and wizards and stuff like that. That to me is really fun. The thing that I love about these verticals is the possibilities are endless. It's really just up to your imagination and what you can do. I've already started writing. I've already started coming up with ideas of my own, and I'm working with my manager and other friends who I've are co-stars that have their own ideas that they're pitching and want me to be a part of and things like that. So it's just like this cool space where we get to just be creative.
You've been acting short dramas for quite some time and probably have read many scripts. Have you noticed any trends in the type of stories that are becoming more popular? Is there any genre you think it will emerge or grow in the near future?
I think original stories are getting more popular. People are realizing that just copying and pasting isn't as effective as coming up with new ideas. Or taking old ideas and redoing them. So people like new ideas or nostalgia. And people don't like copies. New ideas, things that are fresh, things that are haven't been done recently before, I think are going to become the standard or the norm. There's going to be a lot less copying and pasting, or there's going to be revamps of old ideas, like old movies that did really well, maybe in the 80s or 90s, and taking those styles and turning them into a vertical drama. I think that's going to be something that happens soon.
Is there any ideas you think that will appeal more to the male audience?
I think when it comes to the male audience, it's going to be action. And you can add plenty of romance into action, but action, I think it's going to be more fantasy. And I don't just mean romantasy, I mean like actual fantasy or things dealing with like cars, things dealing with thrillers. So I think guys like a lot more like excitement than just straight up romance. So thrillers, I think, are going to be important to get a male audience, and horrors. I think guys like horror movies.
People are consume this in a small screen. So how can people be threatened by horror or get excited by action?
The fact that you hold your phone so close to you when you do this, it's so easy to get dialed into it. I don't know if you've ever noticed, have you ever seen any of those reels in which something comes directly at the camera and like it's a jump scare? I think that could easily translate. You get so zoned into what you're watching that you kind of lose focus of what's around you. I think it'd be very easy to get scared or get that thrill. And then for action, honestly, I think a lot of action has to do with the sound effects and visual effects. And so if you can make something that looks cool, if you can do really cool stunts and things and the sounds and everything. So it's just going to be on the post production really to make sure that that it lands, that it hits because you can do everything right in the way that you film it, but if you don't get the right post production with the right sound artists and the right people, it's going to fall flat. It's not going to land. It's not going to be exciting. And regardless of whether you're watching it here or on your TV, you get pulled in by the surrounding sound and visuals.
I've asked this question to many people I interviewed. In your view, what is the essence of short dramas? What makes them so appealing to the audience?
I think right now, as it currently stands, the essence of short drama is escapism,
Hmm.
meaning the viewer wants something that can pull them out of their normal everyday life. Whether that's they're desiring love, so they want romance, whether they want something that's going to excite them, make them feel something because their life is boring, or there's a lot of bad things going on, so they want something else to make them feel good. It's escapism. And honestly, most media is that. And so short drama is, in essence, just like any other movie or TV show or YouTube video or anything that we consume, it's a way to not have to deal with or confront what's going on around you. And that's what we want. And so if we can make that elevated, if we can make it better, then it gives people even more of those feelings, makes people leave more fulfilled.
Short dramas are closer to traditional long form series, or do you feel it's more like branded content or commercials in terms of structure or pacing, or maybe soap opera?
Yeah, I was going to say currently it's much more in the essence of a soap opera movie, is what I'd call it, because you get the drama that comes from a soap in the length of a movie. And yeah, it's episodic, but ultimately you're going to watch the whole thing. Sometimes a lot of people they can only watch 2 or 3 episodes here, 2 or 3 episodes there, but essentially you're just hitting pause on a movie. And so I see these as soap operas that are length of feature films and don't continue on forever. Because that's the thing about soap operas, they go on forever. They don't stop. There's always a new thing happening, but it's a little bit more easy to consume soap opera. I call them Gen Z soaps.
And you say it's a kind of escapism. I can watch a YouTube video or a film. Why should I watch short dramas?
It's a great question. What is it that you're trying to escape from? What is it that you need? And honestly, personal preference. Personally, when I'm watching, like sometimes my life is so crazy, I don't want more crazy or I don't want more emotion feeling this because I'm so emotioned out, especially as an actor. That's all I'm doing. So I don't want to watch a show. I just want to watch a YouTube video that has zero emotion or is just silly or funny, and I don't have to think. Other people, they want, so it really just depends on what it is that you're lacking in your life. Other people want romance. They want to feel the feeling of, wow, what does it feel like to have a man look at me like that? Jeez, that's so nice. And they want that. Others, I want to put myself in this woman's shoes and feel what it feels like to because you know what? I feel like the world is stepping on me. I feel like the world is putting me down. And what would it feel like to have some hero come in and change that for me? Honestly, that's why a lot of the audience of these vertical shorts is women. They're 25 to 45 years of age where sometimes they just want to feel what it's like to have a man who would actually care about them. Because it's sad to say, but in the United States, and I'm sure everywhere, um, it's a man's world. And so they feel like they can just take advantage of all the situations that they can. And it's nice to see what it would be like romanticized if a man actually treated a woman. So I think the appeal really is to each individual viewer what they're lacking or needing in their life. And the business strategy is to find films or vertical shorts that appeal to more, finding ways to broaden that appeal. And that's where having, for example, I love dramedies. It's a comedy that has drama in it and romance. For example, my Fated The Surrogate and as well as my Savage Alpha both had a lot of comedy to it. And the comedy really adds an element of, okay, this is easy to watch, but it's also really cute. It's also really sweet. And so it makes the audience a little bit more broad, whereas a strictly dramatic, zero comedy means you need somebody who's really invested in just the drama to watch it.
You've also worked in longer formats like series or films. So, from your experience, what's the biggest difference in acting between those?
The pacing of filming, usually you're doing 1 to 2 pages a day, whereas in verticals, we're doing 10 to 12 pages a day.
Yeah.
And so you get one, maybe two takes to get your coverage, and then we move the cameras and get the other coverage, and then we're done with the scene and we move on to the next one because we don't have time. And so I'd say that's one of the biggest things. As the actor, you just have to learn how to go fast and be okay with not getting everything as perfect as you want. Or if you want it to be perfect, put the time in beforehand to figure out how it is that you want to relate your character and how you want your character to relate to your co-star and deliver that in the first or second try. So it really forces you to push yourself as an actor, which I appreciate because when I do other things, I get 4, 5, 6 takes and then we move on. And they're doing a whole bunch of different coverage from different angles and different things. And there's so many times where I get to practice and find the character and find the exact way. Whereas if I want it to look good in a vertical, I have to get it immediately.
You were doing some scripts. What are your future career plans?
My future is going to be acting for sure. I don't think I'll ever stop acting. I'll be on camera, whether it's vertically or horizontally, in both. I want to direct, produce, and write verticals as well as horizontal content. And that's in my future. I've got show ideas for comedy shows. I've got show ideas for vertical shows. There's so much creativity that can happen here in this space that I'm just really excited for the future of it. But for right now, I'm constantly working. I'm constantly acting. So I'm just going to let myself do that for as long as I can and see what the universe the opportunities that it gives me